Every so often, I like to go back into my old experiences notebook and I want to dissect why things worked. And today's video is going to be about a grimoire that I have actually done the method for by the book. In fact, that is what this video is about. So today we will be talking about the Greater Key of Solomon, or at least how to do it by the book. This will be a broad overview. This will not be a specifics, like I won't be giving you the full conjurations, but I do want to go into this and explain why it works and how to do it in a more of a grand overview. So, without further ado, I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you enjoy what I do here and you want to support the channel, link in the description of the Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to videos early, Patreon exclusive content, including the Occultic Manual series, which is a monthly write-up that is aimed at being more instructional than what I usually have here on the channel, and less unapproachable than some of the old grimoires I like to talk about on the channel. If any of that sounds of interest to you, link in the description of the Patreon. Hope to see you all there. At this point, the Occultic Manuals are basically me crowdsourcing Agrippa 2 via my Patreon, so many thanks to the people over there who are supporting that. Without further ado, transition. So, here is the Solomonic Pentacles, the traditional method. Now, the reason why I made this is because there are quite a bit of discussions about the various different Solomonic Pentacles, and I'm just going to tell you this now. You can do a lot with the Solomonic Pentacles. However, most people will give you a new method. This is the traditional method that is derived from the Greater Key up to a point. I'm going to tell you right now that this is, my book overviews have never been a substitution to the actual grimoire, and no video that I've ever done has made that more apparent and is more accurate than this one. This video is going to be, we're just going over the basic overview, and I'm giving you the order that you need to look stuff up in, because there is no way in God's green, currently snow-covered earth that I am going to be able to cover everything in this grimoire. Okay? Okay. That being said, why would you ever use this method? Aren't other methods quicker? Objectively, yes. This method can and will take significantly longer than a majority of the consecration method. Than a majority of the consecration methods you will see in the modern versions of these texts. There is a cost triangle. For those of you who are not familiar, there's a thing in business where you can have high quality, low cost, and it would be quick. The effectiveness is going to vary. So in terms of the quality of the magic for the Greater Key, we have very much the quality is a very high quality. I can attest to this personally. If it wasn't high quality, we wouldn't have so many different methods trying to do modernized versions of this method. The cost is also incredibly low. This is one of the only grimoires I know of that is straight up able to be done using paper and ink in terms of the consecration method. However, the effort and time to do that is definitely going to be the thing that suffers. In terms of this cost triangle, the pick 2 triangle here, we are definitely firmly on the side of quality and cost, so that's going to be high quality magic that is cheap. It is definitely not going to be fast. We really, this, I even during the construction of this video, the effort and time that I have had to cut things out for is quite astonishing to me. Because originally I was going to do the present it completely. I have had to scale that back just because otherwise this video would not get done, and we would be repeating ourselves constantly. Which we will see. This method is derived straight from the Greater Key itself and is the quote by the book method of actually doing these consecrations. It is also going to be the by the book method of doing the actual orations of the lesser key. The lesser keys orations are going to be very long, and there's some of them are going to include a lot of psalms. I believe the first consecration you need to do has like 6 or 7 by itself, and there are other books that claim to be the method of using the pentacles. That's fine, but this is straight from the original translated text, and that's why we're looking at it today. We are going back not because we want to do this, but to understand what is the baseline method before we try to streamline anything. What is the core fundamentals of this book? And what is the core fundamentals and the context by which these pentacles were, historically speaking, originally used? Okay? Here's the breakdown. This is the breakdown of the ritual for the consecration alone. The breakdown. You consecrate the holy water. I've actually missed a step here. You consecrate the salt, then you consecrate the holy water, then you consecrate the incense/perfumes or whatever you're going to be using to fumigate your magical space. Then you consecrate the silk, then you consecrate the engraving tool, then you consecrate the other implements that you're going to use. If you're going to be using a drawing compass, you need to consecrate that here. If you're going to be using scissors, you need to consecrate that here, etc. Consecration of the wand, consecration of the pen, consecration of the ink, separate consecrations, by the way. Consecration of the paper, this is actually the virgin parchment by which you will be using to make the actual consecrations. And finally, the consecration of the wax and any clays that you're going to be using. Now, the thing about this is that in this grimoire, it specifically says that you are to have a very specific individual make the candles. I'm going to tell you to not do that and to not bother with that, because that is going to exponentially exponentially double the amount of work and effort you are going to need in order to even source the materials, right? Okay. Let's take a quick moment and just looking at all of this, because there is, and then finally you have the actual construction of the pentacle itself, right? I want to just take a moment and I want to just analyze this and say that if you take anything from this video, do it like this. Go into the greater key, take the holy water method, study that alone, take the pen and the ink concept, study that alone, and take the paper, the consecration of the parchment concept, and take all of these, and we can already improve by using these for different magical operations. We have improved our if we didn't have a holy water consecration, we now have one based on the greater key. If we didn't have a magical pen, we can now make a magical pen. If we didn't know that we could consecrate our parchment before we draw sigil magic on it for some reason, we can do that here, right? All of this is, we are taking the baseline of this entire system and we are using it to inform our other types of magic. And that is the entire reason why we're going through this today. It is not because I am encouraging you to do this yourselves. It is because I want to break this down and point out where we can learn and improve our modern magic by looking at the past. Dave, that's a lot of work. Have you done this before? I actually have. In the interim period between finishing the Kabbalah Magic course, the Red Brick, for those of you who are familiar with the channel, and the Abramillan ritual, I did this ritual. It's not as bad as you think, but it is an endurance race. For my own sanity, I will not be listing the prayers you can find within the book, unless I find it noteworthy, or it can be used as the basis for other consecrations. I am not going to be listing basically any of these, but I will be listing any psalms for sections I'm giving. There is a lot of psalms. That are given, as well as how these can inspire a modern practice. The psalms, really, you just need to, rip Honestly, if you're looking for psalm magic, I'm going to say that past Dave, when he was writing this, was very optimistic. At some point, you need to just find the, I believe it's the 7th book, the secret book of Moses, which has all the psalm magic. You are better able to find versions of this, of psalm magic elsewhere, I will say. I don't particularly like the psalm magic in the Greater Key, however, I'm including it in the sections I do for completion's sake. But ultimately, this is not a replacement in reading the book. It's looking for things we can adapt to our current magical practices. You know this is the important, and this is the entire premise of the video, is just adapting to current practices. What pentacles does this work on? This is the most important question. Any pentacle that you don't need to have made out of a specific metal, this method will specifically work with. This was historically accurate. This was historically actually the most difficult version, given that you needed as pure parchment as possible. Due to modern printing technologies, this method is actually genuinely easier than methods that you will see in antiquity. You don't need to, like, gold was the money of the time. You could literally just take some gold coins and make a gold talisman. You can't do that today. For these, I recommend colored cardstock if possible. However, the book says, paraphrasing here, you can make these of virgin parchment with inks of the planets' respective colors. And it lists the colors here. Saturn is black, Jupiter is celestial or sky blue, Mars is red, Sun is gold or yellow, Venus is green, Mercury is mixed colors. Now, mixed colors here for Mercury is kind of weird. I've heard 2 different descriptions, and I'm going to go into them at the end here in a second. And the moon is silver, or the color of Argentine earth. Silver and gray. It's saying gray. It's, if you look up silver or it's gray. Just use gray for the moon. Back to Mercury for a second. I've heard 2 different descriptions of Mercury. I have heard, like, rainbow used, like a rainbow colored ink, where you use multiple different colors of ink. And I've also heard using a tertiary color for Mercury as well. I was very taken aback by that when I saw it first time. But the reasoning is because, you know, if you look at the colors, if you mix blue and green, you're going to get a blue-green, which is technically a mixed color, according to this system. So basically, if you're using a color like, you know, if you're using orange, by this system, that would technically work because it's mixing red and gold, but orange itself is not actually listed. So if you wanted to apply that correspondence, that's what I personally would use. I used orange for my mercurial talismans and my pentacles of Mercury, so I'm going to recommend you do that here. We begin with the consecration of the salt on Wednesday in the hour of Mercury. Every single thing in this grimoire is basically all done on a Wednesday in the hour of Mercury, and you will notice that there are so many of these consecrations. If you looked at the previous section, you're gonna find that you will not have enough time in 1 hour of the day. Even you could do this on like a Wednesday summer solstice and you still wouldn't have enough time. Because a lot of these are going to be very, very in-depth. So, we begin by praying over the salt using the Givin prayers. Notably, the god names Sabaoth, Elohim, Gibor, and YHVH god names are listed in the beginning section of the prayer. This is important because Sabaoth is half of the god name attributed to Hod. YHVH, Sabaoth, I believe is the god name of Netzach, I believe. I always mix up the Netzach and Hod god names, unless I'm looking at a note. But usually when it comes down to this section, the god names that you're looking at are going to be important. So we know that we're dealing with Sabaoth. The god name Elohim Gibor is important because that is the god name of Givorah, which is going to be the martial sphere of banishing and kicking things out. And then when we are casting the salt into the water, we recite the following psalms. Psalm 102, 54, 5, and 67. I believe these are the correct psalms. Now, I have left out the entire conjuration. I'm going to recommend, if you are serious about doing this operation, you go ahead and buy an entire container of sea salt and consecrate the whole bottle in one go. Because you will use the salt a lot, and the less prayers you need, the better. I believe that when I did this the first time, I made the mistake of not doing this, so I had to do this consecration every time I needed holy water, which resulted in me having to do this about 15 times over the course of about a 3-week period. Do what I do, like, do what I did afterwards, and buy a container and consecrate the whole bottle. Like, they sell them on Amazon. It is cost effective. Please do this. I am saving you time, ideally. Consecration of the fumigations. This is the general structure of all consecrations going forward, and this is why I'm going to not talk about them. Prep what you are consecrating. Say the prayers from the greater key. Sprinkle with holy water. When you go to use the incense, you say a prayer for lighting the incense, and that begins with the kind of iconic lines of, "I exorcise thee, O creature of X." Here's the thing about this. Every consecration going forward is going to be prep the consecration, say the prayer, sprinkle with holy water, say a prayer before you use it. Okay? Every single thing you consecrate in the greater key, you have to use a prayer before using it in order to do it by the book. Holy water, you gotta use a prayer. Incense, you gotta use a prayer. Vestments, you gotta use a prayer. There is a special prayer for donning the vestments, which is the magical clothing you're supposed to be wearing before the operation. Repeat for the rest of the implements and materials. I'm going to be skipping over these because if I recited every single prayer, this video would be 2 hours long minimum, and I want to get to the actual interesting part, which is going to be the ritual at the end. Consecration of the pentacle involves drawing symbols on the pieces of paper and then using all of the consecrated tools in order to construct your desired pentacle. On a Wednesday in the hour of Mercury when the moon is waxing in an earth or air sign. Every single pentacle is to be consecrated when the moon is in a earth or air sign, when it is waxing, on a Wednesday in the hour of Mercury. You're going to store it in you're going to then store it and the consecrated tool in a safe place until you plan to consecrate it. Yeah, so the thing about this is that if you are doing this, you're going to be taking all of your tools and you're going to be putting all of them in a safe place. You're supposed to be wrapping all of these in silk in order to maintain them from the prying eyes of any individual who wants to see what you're doing. So if the pentacles are not in use, according to the book, they're supposed to be wrapped in the consecrated silk. That is why in the earlier section I mentioned the consecration of the silk, which, in order to consecrate the silk in the paper, you need to go ahead, draw specific symbols on them in order to prepare them to be consecrated. And then from there you use them. So the parchment is going to have various different things drawn on it, and then you're going to go ahead and then consecrate it. All of this is the construction of the pentacles, depending on which pentacle you're actually making. If you run out of time, I've heard different arguments about what you should do if you run out of time, because you will. You are going to run out of time. I have heard that you should reconsecrate the pentacles during the proper day and hour. I have also heard that as long as you start it in the day and hour of Mercury, you can just continue. How to consecrate the pentacles. Sense and disperse the space. Recite Psalms 8, 21, 27, 29, 32, 51, 72, and 134. Recite the prayers in the book given. Potentially invoke the powers on the pentacles. if there are powers on the pentacles, you should be invoking them. They're going to be obvious. If they're not obvious, you probably don't need to worry about them. Sense and asperge with holy water, then wrap in the consecrated silk. From here, choose how you will be using the pentacle. If you're going to be carrying it on your person, make sure that it's in a safe place. If you're carrying a money talisman, you're going to want to put that in your wallet. You're going to want to put that in your wallet, and you're going to want to take that around with you because, you know, if you're supposed to be manifesting riches, putting a talisman for riches down is always going to be a good idea. Now, disclaimer! That was all the stuff by the book, and you will notice I went through it very fast. The next part of the book will say that you need a physical circle for the ritual. It is my understanding from reading through this that you are supposed to, like, either draw or etch into the floor the magical circle that you're going to be using. I'm going to tell you now that this is actually not required, though it does help. I have personally found that it is better to substitute the triangle for a circle casting method. You're going to want to substitute this for a circle casting method. I am going to recommend the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you don't have confidence in your skills or have not attempted these rituals in the past, do not do what I am about to explain. While I am giving substitutions based on experience here, I want it to be very clear that this was written with the understanding that the magician and called the exorcist here would have a physical circle. I am dropping it as a cost-saving measure. That being said, if you want, you can go on a print-on-demand store and get one printed. There are, formerly, I remember hearing that there was places that you can go get canvas prints. The prep work. That was not the prep work. This is the prep work. The prep work is finish all prior steps before doing this prep work. This is actually preparing the magician themselves for the operation. Prepare yourself with fasting for a few days in advance. It is specifically supposed to be 9 days. Not required, but it significantly helps. You are supposed to practice abstinence from carnal desires for 9 days. Non-negotiable. This was actually just specifically stated in the book. Begin to do daily purification baths, doing a full blessing of the bath water using the consecrated salt. That is given in the method. Showers would work fine too, you just need to throw it in at the beginning of the shower and recite the confession given in the book at some point of the day. The confession given is 37 lines of pure text of confessing any sin that it was possible to commit, including lies, deceit, murder, slander, using your possessions for ill, not stopping other people from sinning, and many other things. It is probably one of the closest you will get to. If you want to feel spiritually clean, combine the Greater Keys confession with the 7 penitential psalms, and you will feel spiritually stripped of all of your sins because you are just confessing that hard. I personally love the confession given in the Greater Key. However, I will say that for most purposes, it is not necessary. The operation itself, this is the Dave modified method. To begin, you're going to go to your space you've prepared and do preliminary rituals from outside of the book. These are going to be the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram and the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram. Then you're going to go ahead and do the calling of the quarters from the book. From here on out, we are using the Greater Key exclusively. You're going to be going to each of the corners and you are going to be doing a specific prayer that is given in the book to get the spirits to show up, and you are then going to be asking for God to give you protection. After this, you should see the spirits on all sides of the circle. If you don't, there is a more potent conjuration. From here, if you don't see the spirits, you are to do the more powerful conjuration. Then, assuming they show up, you're going to give the address to the spirits, and then show them the pentacles, then continue based on what the pentacle is for. You're going to have a conversation with them. You're going to, if you are trying to get money, you're going to talk to them about getting you money. If you are trying to open roads, you are trying to address them and get them to open up roads and opportunities. Personally, the opening up roads and opportunities was what I did this operation for, and it immediately manifested within the week. If they do not show up after the conjurations, then you use the more threatening ones. There are 2 more of these for 3 levels of severity total, and you then continue by evoking calling up the angels to do this, and you call up the angels basically to be like, the spirits aren't listening to me, I am a child of God, what the hell is going on? Give the license to depart at the end. Okay? Why does this even work? It should be pretty fucking obvious that I have been exacerbated by going through the massive amount of purification rituals and reading all of these and trying to compress these. I have skipped over large swaths of this book, so I am going to explain why you should read this book in its entirety, despite the fact that I personally did not want to cover each individual section here, because it would be too long and we would be repeating ourselves, and it very much is a circling the wagons approach. The reason you do it is because part of the way that this ritual works is a consecrated mass of spiritual purity. The consecration calls for the salt to be consecrated, the water to be consecrated, the incense to be consecrated, the parchment to be consecrated, the pen to be consecrated, the ink to be consecrated, the compass that you are using to be consecrated, the drawing implements to be consecrated, the carving implements to be consecrated. Every single thing is consecrated individually to an excessive degree during certain times, certain rituals, and certain planetary hours when the moon is in specific signs during a waxing moon. The amount of spiritual purity developed over the course of this one operation in terms of making the talismans is disgustingly high. If you include fasting, which you need to do from carnal activities, and if you include actual, normal human fasting, which is, abstaining from particular types of food, you're going to develop even more spiritual purity. You are going to be using this in order to develop a level of magical ability in a short enough time frame to where it should just work. You then are commanding the spirits using the pentacles as a template. Now, personally, whenever I read this, I always interpret the spirits that you are initially calling to be nature spirits. I don't know why this is. Personally, whenever I have done the Greater Key operation, I have always viewed that you are calling up the nature spirits instead of the angels. You are calling them up because they're the spirits of, the rivers and all of that. You are doing it via a very Christian and very, very, very powerfully Abrahamic method, but you're basically kind of trying to get them to show up because look how cool this level of spiritual ability is. Don't you want to participate and do the thing and make this goal happen? And you're kind of trying to hype all of the spirits up in order to do this. And you're also mostly inviting spirits to assist you because of how cool the Pentacles and God are, instead of going through and trying to force the operation itself, right? You're not trying to compel the spirits until after you've given them honestly multiple opportunities to show up. Basically, the first conjuration is, look, we're going to be doing a really cool thing, and the second conjuration is, how dare you not think this thing is cool, right? You don't start calling them demons until they stop respecting, unless they don't respect your really cool pentacles that you spent a lot of time working on, and by God, the heavens and earth will move in order to get the effects of these pentacles to work, and that is why these pentacles work. In all seriousness, every time I read the Greater Key, I use it for inspiration more than I do actual... I don't use the Greater Key by the book nearly as much anymore. I will take and cherry pick different things from the greater key in order to use it for my own purposes. But for the most part, I am absolutely not going to use this fucking book for its desired intentions, because if I'm going to use a pentacle from the greater key, I am not going to be going through these hoops. I am just going to buy a blank off of Etsy for the desired metal, if it's possible, and then I'm going to take a hand engraving tool, and I'm going to engrave that fucking thing by hand and consecrate it during whatever planetary hour feels necessary. So why did I go over this? Because if you do this by the book, it will work. And the reason I know this is from experience, because I used the 5th pentacle of Mercury and the 1st pentacle of the Moon in order to do a road opening operation. And I did the road opening operation in such a way that I noticed and got results the week after I finished that operation. And so that is why when I say that, yes, this does work, I am speaking from experience. This was not a substitution by any means for reading the book. This is, if anything, this was a video trying to go over why we read old occult books that are famous, even if we don't plan on actually working out of them. The same can be said for Agrippa, though I will admit most of my videos at this point are going to be influenced by Agrippa, because a large portion of my practice has become influenced by Agrippa. We read all of these books in order to understand and adapt them into our modern practice. We don't use the books as a jail cell in order to force ourselves to do the ritual by the book. And if we used the slightly wrong color of ink, then our ritual is going to fail. As long as we're doing good enough, it's going to generally work. Because, in case you forgot, sin is missing the mark. Sin is supposed to be missing the mark. God is supposed to forgive us for missing the mark, because he knows we are imperfect. The phrase is, God meets you halfway. This is us trying to get as close to halfway as we possibly can. With that being said, hope everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy. Please read the Greater Key. Please read all the occult books, even though if you don't agree with them. Take it easy.